Well, Alaska is because the current book series I do, it's called the Ray Kozena series, and that is it's just been republished and recovered and everything, and that's about and I wrote the first one I think back in 2019 or something, and that came from a BBC trip I was doing to the U.S. Russian border. Now, at the time, Russian American relations ebbs and flows, goes up and down, and the rest of it. And something bad was Crimea was going. Putin had just invaded Crimea at that time, and I thought I better go and look at this border because nobody really knew much about it. And when I checked it out, I knew why, because it's in the middle of nowhere. It's some of the most hostile, cold, barren, remote places in the world. Barely anybody lives there. And the mainland of Russia and America is separated by about 55 miles. But, and this was what attracted me, in the middle of that 55 miles, there are two islands. And one is an American native Alaskan island with about 80 villages on it. No roads, no hotels, no restaurants, no food blogs. I mean, it was just there. Then on the other side is a Russian military base. And there's less than 3 miles between the two of them. And I said, I've got to get to this place. So I persuaded the BBC to, it was quite tricky, but I got that. And it's you have to go, you fly into Anchorage, then you have to fly to Nome, which is the main sort of old gold rush town on the west coast there. And then I had to charter a helicopter that went into Little Diomede Island. And I chartered it to do a sort of overnight stay, and it was meant to come pick me up the next morning. But out there, the weather is unpredictable. And I ended up staying 10 days or more until the fog lifted and the helicopter could get back in. So we'd done the filming and we got the basic story and we'd done all that sort of stuff. So what do you do? And I sat there looking at Russia. And what sort of was fascinating about this border is there were no flags on either side. There was no border post. There were no buoys in the water saying, this is Russia, this is America. Everybody sort of knew that this was the border and that it was a hostile border, because if you went across the other side, you'd get thrown into jail and maybe not come out again. But then on the island itself, there was no police, no military, no border guards or anything. It was less than 100, about 80 villagers lived there. And that was it. And in my sort of mind as a correspondent, I've been all over these sort of war zone places and that sort of thing. I thought, okay, so supposing a fleet of Russian helicopters just suddenly came over the brow of the hill and came to this island, they could take it just like that. And I thought, what would happen if they did? And I got a number of different answers when I went back to Washington and the Pentagon people and asked them that. I'll mention that in a second. But then when I got back to London, I started writing the story. And of course, no story idea actually survives contact with the written word. So, I had the thing and I stuck. But and I had, these sort of thriller books, Tom Clancy type books, they always have this sort of Harvard, West Point educated hero that's going in to save the world. And I sort of plucked one out of my imagination, I don't know, what do you call him, Brad Pitt or something, so some sort of name like that. And not Brad Pitt, you know what I mean.
I know what you mean, yeah.
And then I thought, I'm completely nuts here, because on the island itself, I mean, these people on the island, they are the most rugged. They know about survival. They can read the weather like we scroll our phones. They'll look at a bird and see which direction it's flying and know what the wind's going to be doing. They can read ice. They can understand all of these things, and they can read people, because it's all about survival and who you're with and that. And two or three of the people on the island I'd met had actually been serving in Iraq and Afghanistan and that sort of thing and come back. And I thought, well, hold on a second, you stupid. This one of these guys is going to be the hero of my series. And and that was Ray Kozena. That's the name of the series, and I did it as a standalone thriller. And actually, interesting, when I got back to Washington, talked to all these sort of intelligence defense guys. I said, "What would happen if Russia did that?" Half of them said, "Well, it would never do that because it would know the consequences," and the other half said, "Oh, we just let it go." just what would it matter? Not whether So there was no unified view on that. So that was to be a standalone, and then it was successful, and I signed another contract with the publisher, another contract. I've done four, and I've just finished the fifth.